We're going to look at coiling today, and coiling is a wrapping technique. And I have a cut off piece of clothesline, and this is a acrylic yarn over here, and this is just a nice cotton thread here. But coiling is a wrapping technique, and you have an inner core, and then you have your element that you're going to wrap with, and it's as simple as that. This is a coiled basket, and you can see how they started in the center, and then they carried different colors of thread in order to make this pattern. But it is wrapping around a core, and you can see the pattern that they created as they were going around. They had to wrap around a previous row. So these are rows. They wrapped around a previous row in a very concise pattern to create that uniformity. This is another beautiful coiled piece. I love it because it's one color, and it's absolutely exquisitely coiled. You can see the lip where they took one single element to finish this off, and you can see just barely where it is connected, where the row is connected. And then how beautifully they finished off the end. So it's just an exquisite coiled basket. And then this is a traditional coiled pine needle basket that I created. I took a workshop. And you can see how the center was started with some wax linen. Pine needles. So what you need is you need some thread to coil with, and you need a needle. So it's almost as if you are sewing when you're doing coiling. So this is a small tapestry needle with a blunt end. This is a napkin ring that I have, and this was also coiled, and you can see the rows, and it was coiled in this direction with some beautiful flat reed. And this is a coiled basket that I've been working on with some fabric scraps, and you can see where I started in the center. And I am coiling around scraps of fabric, and this was my hemp cord that I was using to coil with. So those are some of coiling samples that I have. We're going to get started with just a really simple sample. So here's a piece of clothesline, and I trimmed the end so it wouldn't be so bulky. Here's my tapestry needle, and I just have a simple piece of acrylic yarn. And anytime you're going to work with yarn, remember that you don't want it too long so it creates some kind of a tangled mess as you're working with this. So this is approximately chest to fingertip length. So this is how we're going to start. You can see that my ends are opposing each other. I'm going to start here, and I'm going to wrap here towards my end. Then I'm going to push those together, those ends together, and this is my center where I'm going to insert my needle. So we're going to get started. I'm working approximately, I don't know, maybe 1.5 inches from my end. And I like to wrap away from me, so I'm going to hold my end. I'm just going to pinch it in place, and I'm going to start wrapping. And I want to go over that yarn, little cross right there, and that's going to be my anchor. And then it's a very slow process, and what you want to do is make sure that you wrap right next to the previous wrap. So it's winding, it's wrapping, and this is called coiling. You can coil with any kind of flexible element. So I'm going to stop for a second and pinch these two to see if this is a good place. Like this could become my center right here. And then I could actually cut this off and taper that as well. But I'm going to keep wrapping. Not quite where I'm all the way at the end. So I want to join these two rows together. So now these become rows when I'm creating a form. So now I'm going to join these two rows together. So when I wrap, I like the element, in this case my yarn, I like it always to be in between the two rows. And if I turn this over and wrap around that, you can see how now I'm wrapping around two rows instead of one. And that's how I'm going to begin. So I'm going to wrap some, and then I'm going to turn and put my clothesline rows together, but I want to make sure that I'm getting very close to that because I don't want to have any of the clothesline show. So I'm pinching. And so I'm always working away from the beginning. Here's my beginning, and I'm working away from it. And then the reason I tapered the end, because I didn't want a lot of bulk here. So let's see what that looks like. And I'm going through my yarn fairly quickly. I'm eventually going to turn this. So I'm not that happy with the white right here, but that's okay. I'll let it go. So I'm going to pinch this, and I want to join this row with this row. So in coiling, you are wrapping your inner core, and then you want to join what you're working on with the previous. So this is where I say I'm bringing up my yarn in between the two rows, and now I'm going to go down into that beginning opening where I started. So this is going to go down, and this is called an 8 figure, and then I'm going to come back up in the middle, and then I'm going to pull that together tightly. And then what that does is that creates a seamless connection. You don't ever see where the wrapping is. So again, I'm going to come up in the middle, wrap around. Well, actually, I want to anchor going down into that previous row. And I want to come up in the middle again. So this is why, to me, it feels like sewing. Wrap, wrap, wrap. Okay, I ended up in the center. I'm going to go down into my hole. So at the very beginning of coiling, you're always going to go down into that center hole, and then I'm going to come up in the middle again. That's my figure 8. So this is a much heavier, fuzzy element. And let's look at what the back looks like. You can see where the frayed edge came up. That's not that attractive. I'm going to stop now, and then I'm going to show you this with the wax linen. Here's my hemp, my polished hemp, which you all have, and what I'm going to do is trim or taper the tip as well. So when it comes around and I pinch it together, this is going to be less bulky right here. So I have a very light pink piece of wax linen. Right, and we're going to start about here. And then I'm going to wrap towards the end here and then squeeze this, pinch this together just like we did at the beginning. Now you don't have to start in a circular formation each time. You could do a long line and have that line meander. But when we're starting out and you're learning, I usually start out in a circular formation. I have my tapestry needle. And my wax linens, right? So you have to have your tapestry needle attached. So let's begin. So here's my end. And I'm going to begin by wrapping. And remember, I wanted to anchor the beginning. If I can bring that up. I'm trying to get that camera to focus. What I like about wax linen is that it will cling to itself. It has a lot of structure and body. Of course, you can see that it's much smaller than my fuzzy turquoise yarn, acrylic yarn. So this will look much more refined. And so when I'm using wax linen, I like to be more precise. This is obviously a very meditative process. And you can see how much I've already wrapped, about 1.5 inches. So we're going to wrap up to that end. And then I'm going to pinch this and see what that looks like. So that's quite a large opening. If you didn't want it so large, I would take out the wrapping and pinch it that much. So it would be much smaller, kind of like how you see here. But for fun, let's have a large opening in the beginning. So yeah, I'm pinching the 2 rows together. And now I'm going to bring my yarn behind, and I'm going to join my 2 rows of hemp and make this 1 row. So you start with wrapping a line, and then you join the ends together. And you can see what it looks like on the opposite side. So you want to wrap enough that you have enough wrapped, and then you can decide how you want to turn this. Actually, I'm going to keep wrapping it, and I'm going to make a different configuration. What's fun about wrapping, especially with wax linen, is that you can create quite a long line of wrapping and then join that wrapping line anywhere previously. So I'm using up quite a lot of my wax linen. It's really easy to add a new piece on. So I can turn this and I can have like a yin yang to begin with. And I'm just trying to figure out how I want to keep wrapping this. I want to keep wrapping this in this configuration because I'm going to wrap onto the polished hemp, right? That doesn't have any wrapping on it. So I'm wrapping away from the beginning. I'm going to bring my yarn up in between. I'm going to pinch where I want to attach the row. And I'm going to go into this hole, the hole that I started with at the beginning. And so I want to make sure I pull the wax linen fairly tightly. And that's what the back looks like. And then I'm going to come up in between, and then again, that's the figure 8. When you always have your yarn, my wax linen in this case that I'm working on, it comes up in between the 2 rows. Pull that tightly and then wrap some more. So some people will wrap 3 or 5 times and they will keep that rhythm or that pattern going, and then they will attach. So the more you attach your rows together, the stronger and the more durability and the more solid your piece is. So go down into the center, come up between the rows again. So that's really just like sewing. And then I'm going to wrap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So give yourself a pattern. Like I'm going to wrap 3, I'm going to wrap 5, I'm going to wrap 8 times. So I'm going to go down into my center. Because my center was so large to start with, I have a lot to maneuver going around that. Come back up in the middle. So when I come up and do my figure 8, I want to pull the yarn tightly and then continue wrapping. So I'm only wrapping around this part of the polished hemp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's look what it looks like on the other side. So you get an idea that these rows look separate, but they're connected through that figure 8 down here. And if you took this apart, you can see where the wax linen is sitting on top here, and that's where this row is connected to this row. And so now I'm going to connect those rows again. I'm going to go down in the center, come back up, and then wrap some more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, oops, it's getting stuck, 5, And there are obviously many different kinds of patterns and formations on how you wrap. But this is again called coiling. It's a wrapping technique. So I'm going to go down in to the hole, come back up. Now you have to decide, where do you want this hemp cord to go? Do you want to start forming a wall, which means you're going to push it so it goes up here? Do you want to make your base grow larger, flat? Do you want to coil a line and bring it over to the top? So you're really wrapping and controlling how you want this line to form. So let's continue. I'm going to run out of this pink wax linen pretty soon. Go into the center. So we're almost done with going back into the center. Come back up in between. Pull the wax linen tightly. So let's wrap. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this might be a good place to start building the wall. So I'm looking at my wax linen and it's still close to this opening. So I'm going to still bring it through the beginning opening. Pull that wax linen, come back up to the opening. And that's the beginning. Wrap it a few more times. 1, 2, 3. I want to come over to the other opening. Okay, now I can attach it over here to that side. And I'm almost running out of my thread. So I'm going to go down. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I can just barely make this end of the yarn here. Go down into the hole, pull it tightly, come back up in the middle, bring it over. I'm going to wrap it once. So I took it off the needle. So I have this little end. So to start a new color, you just take your end and pinch it onto your hemp. And then you're going to take the same color or a new color. I have light purple threaded on this needle. You can also make patterns this way. So this wax linen is thinner in gauge than the pink. So this is smaller. So I'm just going to pinch these two together and hold those in place. And I'm going to start wrapping. And I want to wrap very close. I don't want to wrap too much in advance because I still want to connect it to the previous row. And this is what the back looks like. And I want to move that purple over a little bit so both sides look good. So here's my thread in the middle. I'm going to go into this space now because this is where my thread is closest to. And now you're going to be able to see the purple because it's a contrasting color to the pink. And so this is the idea of when you have contrasting colors and you want to create some kind of patterning, you have to be consistent with how many times you wrap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So to pay better attention to how it looks on the back. Push that box linen over. I want to have good coverage. Okay, so now I can start forcing this hemp as a row. If I want to build up a wall, I just force it in. I'm using the center here. Pretty soon when I build up the walls here, that I'll be going into these spaces and not this big opening, but I have the big opening to go around right now. So I'm gonna come back up, making my figure 8. So you have to pay attention. So I'm wrapping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm just actually pinching it so it's going to start forming a wall, just like you see here. So now this row is on top of the previous or bottom row. Come into the center. You can see what it looks like on the back. And then wrap. So I left all my samples in the classroom. So we'll take a look at those later. So you can see I've just forced this row on top of the previous one. And that is wrapping. I'll add, oops, I want to get this tail end to be a part of that. I'll show you how to add a color. 3, 4, 5. Here's the back. The front. Do it some more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Come back to the middle. Come up. I actually came up on this side. That's fine. So you can see where I'm going to come back up through the middle. So I'm going to add pink so you can see another color, but you can see the back, how the purple is on top of the pink, and you're going to see that. So that's why if you make a pattern and you're consistent about wrapping, the previous rows, when you can see the contrasting color, can also be a design element. And you can clearly see that in this coiled basket. And how here they jumped, I'll show you on the back, how here they jumped up 2. So here they're not using the figure 8. They're wrapping and then they're overlapping 2. And you can see how the purple is hidden where we have red. So red is brought up, purple is hidden, red is hidden when purple is drawn up. And that's fairly easy to do. Let me get my pink. Here's my pink wax linen. So when you're using multiple colors, you typically want to have that many tapestry needles so you're not constantly threading a tapestry needle. So now I can bring in the pink, right? I'm just going to hold the pink in place right here. So I'm just pinching these together. Okay. Is that right? No, pink is going to go this way. Sorry. Just took that out of my hand. So pink is going to go in that direction. But I'm going to start wrapping close to where I left off with the purple. So wrap, 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 wrap. Of course, you're going to create a pattern by doing this, exchanging the colors, right? So I've just wrapped with the pink. So I'm going to take my pink and pinch it. So this was the end of the pink that I began with. Here's my pink line that I'm using for wrapping. I'm still going to pinch those together. Now I'm going to pick up my purple, which is sitting underneath the pink, and now I'm going to wrap with it. But don't forget you want to sew and connect into the previous row. So that's my purple I'm using right now, so I'm going to connect with it. So I have my purple. So I'm going to go down into the space, and now I'm going to go down, not into this big open space, but right up here, the previous row that sits right below it. So now I'm working into the previous row because that's where my lead is. So I've combined that together. I can go around one more with the purple. And then I'm going to exchange the purple and take up the pink now. So here's my pink that I'm still coiling around. Here's my purple, right? And it just sits on the hemp, and I'm going to wrap with my pink. 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's the back. And I can sew with the pink or I can sew with the purple. That's up to you. I'm going to sew with the pink and I'm going to sew into this space, which is right here. because that's my row. That's closest to the row I'm working on. Come back up in the middle, the 2 rows. I'm going to wrap around once with the pink, and then I'm going to pick up the purple. So here's the pink. I'm just going to pinch it and start wrapping with the purple. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I did 5. So do you see how we are building up and building a wall right now? Just by pushing up the rows. So it's a gradual process. Now I'm going to sew with the purple. I'm going to go down into that row. Attach the row by pulling the wax linen and coming back up in the middle or between the 2 rows, and I want to move that wax linen so it's close. And then I'll wrap and hold the purple and pick up the pink. So you can have multiple colors attached to your hemp, right? You can have many multiple cords and just pick up the one that you want to use for your pattern. And then again, I usually have a tapestry needle attached so it goes quickly. Now I'm going to take my needle and go down into the previous row. Let's look from behind. So this is going to come up between the 2 rows. So that's wrapping, beginning wrapping. You can see how I started with a large opening and drew that line around, wrapped it a lot, and then came back up and attached it here. Let me see if I can get a better angle. Attached it here, attached these rows together, and then I added the purple and then wrapped with the purple, and then I added the pink. So I'm going from pink to purple, and making a pattern. And then the 2 colors are just being held right here close to the core. And I'll do some more and we'll see where that comes. I'll show you some other stitches later.